Hello, Sarah. So I'm with Sarah, the binge eating therapist. We've been graced to have come to a couple of our retreats now. Is it two or three?
I've done three now, Matthew. Yeah.
Okay. Can I ask when was the first one? Well,
The
um,
first one was September 2022.
okay. Yeah, good job.
Yeah,
Um, and you are known as the binge eating therapist, aren't you?
I am.
So speaking about that, how that's kind of people have come through your YouTube channel, and it seems like they don't know your name, which is kind of, it's interesting because that's what happens on the retreats as well, isn't it? Um, we don't know a lot of our partners' names at all, and it's very, until the end. So
Yeah. There's people I've met on the retreat who I feel like I know so intimately, and I don't know if I ever did find out their name in the end. Yeah, I feel like I know them.
for sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's I'd like to ask initially how you did come to find us, and also I'm very interested in your background as to how you came to be offering what you do. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, first off, I mean, how did you find us?
2022, I think, was one of the most challenging years of my life. I think at the beginning of 2022, I had potentially like one of the darkest periods of time I've had, even darker than when I've been in an eating disorder, where everything really felt extremely hopeless. And I think I was kind of searching for something. And I turned 40 in the July, and I don't know why I had it in my head I needed a retreat, but I did, and I found this retreat. It was a foraging retreat, and I went on this for my birthday, and I had the worst time. And I came away an absolute ball of shame from just feeling like I couldn't cope in nature. Everyone else was having this wonderful time being out in the forest. And I was this city girl who just couldn't cope with a spider in her tent. And like I just felt terrible, terrible. And but when I came back from that retreat, I was meditating and I had a really profound shift of gratitude in me. And what I realized in that moment, it's going to sound really obvious, but I don't know if you, well, I think you probably have had the experience where you have a realization that comes up as opposed to like it comes down from your thoughts.
Mhm.
And it was this realization that, yes, whenever I offered any kind of gratitude, I would offer it out. I saw the importance of gratitude, but I would offer it out to like life or universe or God or whatever it was, I'd offer it out. Yet, whenever anything went wrong, I'd blame myself. And I had this moment where this came to me, and how unbalanced it was that things were going well, push all the gratitude out. If things are not going well, it's all my fault. I was like, how does this work? I'm responsible when things go wrong. Um, and I'm not responsible when things go right, in my perception of right or wrong at this time. And it was such a profound shift, and I felt lighter, and something lifted off me in that time. It just lifted. And this would have only been probably a month, 6 weeks before I came to the retreat. And again, there's a bit of a running joke with my friends that I just love a retreat. So I was looking through the retreat website thinking like, what is it? Still a sense of searching for something, but I was in a much more grounded place, I think, when I came. And the retreat was just on one of these retreat websites where they list them. And it was conveniently located. The dates worked for me. And said something about dyads, but that we were going to be in silence. So I thought, I'm just going to go and spend time in silence. And so obviously the retreat turned out to be nothing like I thought. But at that time, I was like, yeah, okay, I'm going to go and spend a few days in a grade 2 listed building, um, just journaling and being alone with my thoughts. And that's what I was expecting. I had no idea what to expect when I came.
Yeah. How did the journaling go?
The journaling, because we spoke about this the other day when I arrived at the retreat and Matthew was going through the rules. the rules, or kind of the boundaries, the container of the retreat. And one of them was no journaling. And I can remember being shocked, really shocked. It seemed the strangest request. And no reading was one of them. And I remember you sent us out the room to go upstairs. And when we came back into the room, like 15 minutes later, that's when it kind of began. We went into the silence. And I went upstairs to my room and I brushed my teeth. And I remember reading the back of the toothpaste and thinking, oh, I'm going to get all the reading in that I can. I know I'm not going to be reading for a few days. And it felt like this last act of like rebellion is that I was going to read the back of the toothpaste before I ceased to read for a couple of days, or write for a few days.
Yes. So sounds like, you know, we've spoken this previously as well, that gift of desperation, you know, of what brings us to the call, as it were, you know, answering the call. And is that something which kind of brought you into your offering yourself, you know? Is that through your own self-realization of, you know, where your offerings in the binge eating came from?
Yes, it was. I started training to be a therapist while I was still struggling with food, while I was still in my eating disorders. And it was kind of this sort of confluence of events that happened that I'd never thought before. I was a police officer before. I always thought I would do my full 30 years and then I would retire and maybe do something as a second career later on. But I ended up going to this evening class on counseling, getting to this class and just feeling like I could kind of, almost like I could breathe. I was with people who were like interested in what it means to be a human being, what it means to exist. You know, therapy and counseling doesn't necessarily explicitly look spiritual, for want of a better word, but often it is. It's at least existential. And I was hungry for that. And so I can remember being in that room and being like, oh, like these are my people. This is what I want to do. And then when I was training, I had a little thought in the back of my mind that if I ever recovered, then maybe that's what I would go into. But also not being sure at that time, because I didn't know whether I would ever be able to work with it just because I'd recovered from it. And then I was offered a placement. Actually, my last year of studies was offered a placement in an eating disorder clinic. And then, as life seems want to do, I just kept getting these clients, even though I wasn't advertising specifically around food problems. These were the clients that were coming to me, and, you know, my recovery was becoming more and more stable. And it just felt like exactly where I wanted to be. And when I talk about this stuff with people or YouTube or wherever it is, I feel like it's going to sound strange. I almost feel like I'm not me. And there's something that's so like, it's kind of like right in my, feels like it's right in my bones. I was at a doctor's surgery having a procedure that was really painful. And the nurse was holding my hand. And I was in so much pain, like my body's shaking. And she says, oh, what do you do? And I start telling her, and she starts asking me about binge eating. And the minute I started talking about it, the pain stopped.
Amazing.
And so it's almost like I've gone in and run groups and stuff when I've been feeling really like poorly or under the weather or in pain. And the pain leaves me when I'm doing this work. And this sounds, I can hear like a little voice, and it's my ego or something that's now like judging me for talking about it this way, because it sounds really like grandiose or something. So I'm just noticing that, and I'm going to name it, because there's a little voice in the back of my head that's giving me a little kick going, oh, Sarah, get over yourself. You're making it sound much grander than it is. And I'm just, it's not me, but it's there. That voice is there.
Yeah. Well, I certainly recognize that. I recognize both aspects of that. The calling and, you know, the naming that, the kind of deliverance of what that is, you know, because it seems so, you said grandiose, but I think divorced from the reality that we're kind of normalized to, you know, that to not really listen to this stuff within. So, you know, it's always great doubt, which really shows itself in the retreat as well. But yeah, so thank you. And coming on to that then, so, you know, I've experienced this myself, you know, the great darkness, you know, prior to, and I think, you know, I was in a very similar position when I first came to one of these, and I'd had quite a lot of meditative and prayer practice, and I was in recovery as well, you know, through alcohol and drugs, and I think 22 years clean at that time, but also in a very dark and depressive state. So you know, there needs to be something, doesn't there, as a driver, it seems, you know, for us to, you know, take the necessary action. Some action. We don't know what the necessary action is, I guess, but
And it's interesting. I don't know if it felt the same for you, but I kind of thought, why am I in this dark place when I've recovered? You know, it made sense. When I had an eating disorder, it made sense to feel this dark.
yes,
It didn't make sense. Life wasn't bad enough to feel this dark, which just compounded the shame.
yeah, exactly. Mine was quite dark at the time. I'd, you know, been through yeah, loss of businesses and stuff like this. I was lost to the god of money, you know, that's where my energy went. So although the compulsion to drink or use was just not there anymore, you know, I think that potentially leaves us in a really difficult state of purgatory, you know, so we don't have the out available to us anymore. So, you know, I didn't have the drink or the drugs. It, you know, it wasn't on the radar. So then what? So everything's, you know, much more real, and there's no out. You know, that's certainly where it, you know, I felt I was. I don't know if
Yeah,
that's okay.
it does. And I also saw how my patterns with food were just kind of a bit transposed onto other things. Like the same pattern that was just played out over here is now playing out over there.
Sure.
Which is, I don't know, humbling to realize that. But I think a big part of the shift is realizing I'm not my pattern. So I can't say like all these patterns have completely vanished and I have none of these sort of tendencies to seek escape at times. But it's different. And I think that's something that's quite hard to articulate, how something can be experienced differently, yet it's still kind of there. And maybe it's just part of being human or part of my human experience. I'm not sure.
Yeah, well, it certainly resonates with me. You know, people who, you know, I'm kind of wary around people who, you know, haven't come through what they're offering themselves. You know, it always seems like an um, ideology.
Ideology or ideological.
Yeah, whatever you said. Rather than knowing, you know, what it means. And yeah, so we'll come on to a little bit of that as well, because you know, this the process of the retreat, you know, certainly brings us to this place of not knowing. But you know, I'd like to ask your kind of experience of it. You know, how was it for you? You know, when it kind of dawned on you there's no journaling, you know, it wasn't going to be, you know, it's very structured, isn't it, by nature, this. So how did that land when you actually got there?
I remember going to bed that first night. So we'd done a few rounds of dyads, and I got into bed, and there was something about the novelty of it that I found very appealing. So to begin with, I was kind of a bit psyched. I was like, yeah, let's do it. Let's see what this is. And then a little voice in me said, Sarah, you're gonna want to leave and you need to stay. And I went, yeah, no, that's fine. I'll stay. And then the voice was like, no, you are going to want to leave and you need to stay.
Beautiful.
And so on that first night, I made this commitment. This was on the first retreat. I made this commitment that no matter what, no matter if I thought this was an absolute load of rubbish, as I know my brain, I know what it will do to try and get me out of situations, to try to protect me, but that no matter what, I needed to stay to the end. And that really helped because it took away the negotiation. There were times when I wanted to go, but I didn't start negotiating with myself. And
Yes.
the problem is I'm quite a good negotiator. So if I start negotiating with myself, it's usually only going in one direction.
I have a quick question on that. What was it, a male or a female voice? Or was it your voice?
It doesn't feel like it was gendered to me.
Yeah.
It felt like me. It felt like a part of me.
Yes.
It didn't feel like a mystical something speaking to me. It felt like it came up through me. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And I know, we're speaking about gender. So, you're in quite a masculine environment, and there's two males, there's myself and my brother. How did that land?
It really surprised me. I remember when I arrived noting that, because I think there was 14 of us, and I think three of us were female. And I remember being really surprised because any other retreat I'd been on had always been predominantly female. And so I think to begin with, it threw me. And yet there was on the last day, so I had to kind of bring it all into context, on the second full day, on the Saturday, I had the moment of like euphoria and joy. Actually, I don't even remember if it was the Friday or the Saturday, whichever day it was. And I came crashing out of it. And that was really hard because then I was trying to grasp, and I was trying to get back there, and I was trying to get back there. And it wasn't until the final day, there was a particular person on the retreat that I was holding some judgment about. And I could feel it in there. I was like, I don't know, there was a lot of judgment going on around me and this person. And then it wasn't until the final day, when I worked with them for the final time, that I saw myself reflected in that person. And I saw that everything that person was saying was just me. It was just that the circumstances were different, but actually we were the same. And how I've come to sort of understand this experience of how, because what happened for me in the moment is when I felt this sort of euphoric sense of oneness, the fact that I crashed out of it so hard and so suddenly, it sent me spiraling into shame because I thought, you're deluding yourself, Sarah. Like you just got swept up in something. Like I completely doubted how real it was because I thought if it was really real, how on earth could you ever have come out of it? Because when I was in it, it was like I got the cosmic joke, and I don't mean a joke as in a prank or anything like that, but the humor, and sort of almost this bemusement of why can't everybody else see this? And then to have that and to feel like so certain that you're experiencing something so true, and then to feel like you lose it because the fear comes in. That was the really difficult thing for me to reconcile on that first retreat. And so by that final day, when I let go of the judgment, that was a big piece of it. And I left on that final day just feeling completely surrendered. I didn't know how I felt. I felt fried. My brain was just fried. But then what I found over the next few months was actually, it was immediate from when I left. I remember getting in the car, and I'd always put a podcast or an audiobook on in the car. And I was like, I didn't want it. I just didn't want any distraction. I'm always someone who has to fill up my time. This is what happens, is this filling up of something. I like plans and I like social events and I like this because I like doing things and knowing what I'm doing. And being able to have a weekend where I didn't make any plans, to some people that might sound like heaven, but to me that was like my idea of hell. But it was this completely different experience of myself, which is available to me kind of under two circumstances. One, I assess myself for any judgments that I'm holding on to, and I need to release them. And two, I need to hand over my fear. Because I think it's judgment and fear for me anyway, in terms of my experience of myself. Those two things are present, I'm blocked from experiencing that. When those two things can be put down, it's there. So it's not that it goes anywhere, it's that I'm throwing up these walls sometimes, not necessarily intentionally.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, it does seem more and more apparent to us that the space itself, is the feminine. What's created is the holding, and that's communally created through us all in the common intent, it seems. So did that feel present? Because I'm really interested in kind of how this, because it's a very strange thing, isn't it? Like you said at the beginning, it's like we're coming together, we don't know the other's names, and yeah, it's very intimate, and yet something builds where it feels kind of right, or the right place, or the right time, environment to kind of allow stuff to be seen. Was that part of that for you? Was that there?
I think it kind of demands this self-honesty. And demands might sound like a strange word, but it's, you can only hide for so long in the dyad work when you're doing it for this continuous period of time. And I remember at the beginning when the dyads were explained, inside my smug little voice has got, I've got this. I get that this isn't about labels and identity, but I was still intellectualizing. Because actually I love language. I love finding ways to kind of communicate and create meaning in words. And I remember on that first retreat, I think you said to me at one point, I think I might have been working, I think I was even working with Luke, because you said to me, you just came in my ear and you said, you're intellectualizing. And I felt this anger that came up from that. Like it was jarring to be kind of told this in the moment, I'm intellectualizing. And I think I vocalized that to Luke. And Luke said, like, good, like, let's use that. And so going into places that's never felt okay, say never, maybe never felt okay for me to go to. And I would say that on that retreat, I experienced everything from like the deepest terror and shame up to this sort of joyful euphoria and everything in between that scale, everything that this human being is capable of feeling. I felt like a hit every one of those points. And there's no way, I think, that I would have felt safe enough going to any of those places on my own. So I think there's something in that, in the container. You're not in it alone. I know you've used the examples before, like we're all in the doldrums together when we go through the time when it's tiring and it's boring. And those are sometimes the hardest to go through when you're bored and you're tired. At least if you're angry or there's a big feeling going on, there's something's happening. You're at least entertained, if nothing else.
Sorry,
so,
I
yeah.
just have no sense of that though. It's just like, just so, I don't know, despondent, it's like, it's nothing more. And you're being demanded, it seems. Yeah. Yeah. Good. So you know, for us, you know, that's a real resonance of the hero's journey, and you know why it's, you know, it's called that, you know, why we adopted that name so well. And of course, you know, I'm sure you came across this as well. It's, for some it's very easeful, and others really do get dragged through the coals. And the heroic bit is showing up. It seems that's like 98% of this. And you know, there's that bearing witness and the revelation. You know, it's heroic to watch someone go through this as well, because it stirs up so much for ourselves as well, especially, you know, as a, you know, for a therapist, you know, you want to get in and help the other. So it's quite a, feels like quite a process. So when I hear that, you know, it really you know, brings that sense of fellowship, I guess, that we've been through that process, you know, ourselves. And that's what really chimes with anyone who actually shows up and then actually gives it their all through the process. And it's, you know, it's so heartfelt as a shared experience, because we're all going through that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the cosmic joke, you know, what comes at the end is exactly that, isn't it? It's such a release, and you know, so bleeding obvious.
And so good humored as well, because I feel like the word joke isn't quite apt. I can't find a better word, because a joke sounds a little bit like, oh, the universe is just playing a trick on us, you know, and it's not that. It's hard to describe what it is, but I just really want to emphasize that it's not that. It is so good humored, and like it's loving humor is the only way I can really try to describe it.
Yeah.
And watching other people's process and other people going through it is such a big part, I think, of what makes dyad work and a retreat like this something really unique. Because I was imagining a silent retreat where I'm going to draw into myself, and actually I was pushed out of myself. Because
Yeah.
what I thought I needed and what I needed, two different things.
Yeah. And it, yeah, pushed out and drawn out, it seems. It's like there's the you know, the bearing witness, you know, kind of elicits something more. And also the from the unconscious as well. I don't know if you experience that. I mean, just stuff there, you know, it's like, you know, I didn't know, or I thought I dealt with this, and here it is, you know. So
Yeah. It felt like, especially the third retreat for me, felt like a clearing. There was stuff that came up that I hadn't, memories that came up that I hadn't even, I'd kind of known about, but not really understood. That just helped to make a lot of sense of things. And I think there's been like a lesson, particularly with retreats 1 and 3. I've done 3. The lesson for me in the first retreat was surrender, because I have my pattern, or my conditioning, if you like, is to have an independent streak that's verging on pathologically independent. So that surrender piece, I think, was really important for me in the first one. And the third one was compassion. And I would have said that I was a compassionate person. I mean, I'm a therapist and I have enormous care for the people that I work with. But what I didn't have compassion for was my own fear. And it was fear that crashed me out of the euphoric experience on that first retreat. And I think I've been holding on to some self-judgment ever since for that piece. And so on the third retreat, experiencing that fear, and rather than trying to think, you know, I'm supposed to figure out how to get rid of this fear, I just like kept pouring compassion on the fear itself and just allowing the fear to be there. And then it was a very different experience of the fear. And that was a really important lesson. So I think we can listen to somebody talking let's say we have a teacher that we really like, or anyone like listening to my videos, you could listen to something and really resonate with something someone's saying. I could talk about surrender and someone could go, oh yes, that's me too. I need to start doing the surrender thing more. But I don't think that the fundamental shifts happen until we realize things for ourselves. We hear it, and there were lots of things I'd heard over and over again. Like I'd kind of been on board with this idea of non-duality and this like concept of oneness. Hadn't really experienced it in any significant way, maybe glimpses here and there. So I think what the retreat offers is a chance for a really deep experience and a deep lesson that doesn't come from another human being saying, it's a really good idea if you think about this concept in this way, and you go, oh yeah, actually I agree, but it doesn't do anything.
Yeah, yeah, and it seems like that again is that, you know, the way that the void shows itself each time, you know, because it seems like each time we go, it shows itself, and there's that requirement for us to kind of step into the not knowing fully, you know, to, you know, it's signified, you know, as a giant fish or a whale in mythology, and we have to jump into it, you know, the darkness of the unconscious. And you know, that the way it shows itself is unique to us, and each time we do it, you know, it brings us to a different place, it seems. But what we're, you know, being, it's almost demanded, it's like a payment, is to come to that place of, you know, we talk about surrender, but when you're in, you know, complete surrender and have no ideas, it seems like this is when something comes through and snatches the hero from the jaws, really. So yeah, that resonates a lot. You know, fear, and you know, it seems like that fear of the darkness is matched by people's fear of the light as well. What this is and its terrible brilliance, potentially. So there's that, and as we, you know, began speaking as well about great doubt being the final barrier of this, you know, seems to, you know, there's recognized signposts along the way which are kind of, you know, in patterns for all of us. So yeah, compassion, you know, that sounds very rich. You know,
My capacity as well to be with people who are really suffering increased.
Yeah.
When I was able to be with that level of pain in myself, I really noticed that in how it's something that as therapists we practice anyway, and I think it's never been an area that I really thought I needed to develop any more than I already had. So I'm okay with being with people in pain. I can find enough meaning to hold myself steady, but it was a different quality to the presence that I was able to offer afterwards, and I really noticed that, and it's hard. Everything was slower in a really kind of lovely way. And as I'm talking about that, I can feel a little bit of longing in me because I feel like I've lost some of that. Because I'm someone again, like there's that pull to speed up. And when I forget, I get back into speeding up. But for a couple of months after the retreat, it was like the work was done for me. And then afterwards, it became much more about, well, what am I willing to do from an intentionality perspective to continue like connecting with this and what this offers?
Yeah, that's very interesting as well. I just we just had one in Guatemala and Mexico, and at least 50% on each were therapists, and it was 80–90% females to males, you know, so it's a complete, and I've done them where it's all female. And that is something recurring, you know, that there is somehow a greater capacity or a different quality to the, you know, the what holds this, or more reliance, I guess, in or faithful in that something moves between us and kind of holds that space. Less of the doership from us. Feels less hands-on, I guess.
Yes. And the less of the doership, that feels like that should be my mantra.
Yeah.
Just generally. Yeah.
We actually call it the doership crisis. It's like, you know, I've got to do something, you know, it's like, you know, watching someone really, you know, go through, or, you know, you wanting to offer tissues, or, you know, there's just a complete absence of that, you know, to allow that space to do what it needs to do, you know, so we spoke a true dialogue, the dialogos, between the two, when both enter into not knowing, something greater than comes through the middle and kind of holds the space.
And the not knowing is funny, because it's like, if I catch my mind, I know, spinning stories about somebody, they said this, and that probably means that, and this, that. And then I see it happening, and then it's so funny, because like, what, why are you trying to figure this out? You can't know, you don't know. And I think there is so much, for me anyway, so much relief in going, oh, I don't know. Not even I don't have to know, like maybe I'm not even supposed to know. And that's and it there's an openness with that, especially with people. When you meet new people, if I can carry that, like, not knowingness. And it's really important as well, I think, for anybody who works in a speciality, you know, I'm putting myself out there as like some kind of expert on binge eating. But if I go into like every client session deciding like, oh, this is what's going to be going on and this is what they need to do, never, like, that person's never gonna see progress from my efforts in that kind of situation. So that not knowing, and I laugh at myself because I can't believe it when I've forgotten again. I think I can figure something out, or I think I know something.
Yeah.
It's absurd, really.
And it seems like, you know, you're speaking about the joy and the, you know, for me, it's like the prodigal son. You know, it's that story that, you know, whenever we turn, you know, that gaze is always there and waiting for us. You know, so that feels like that. But when I feel I've got something, it's like, you know, it comes in as a sideball, and it's got such humor the way it does it. You know, you can only, you know, be in awe, you know, and really laugh with it, you know. I did held one in Mexico last year, and you know, the time is so different. I flew in that morning, so it was 4 o'clock in the morning for me, 5 o'clock, you know, 10 o'clock, and on the last night, I was really, you know, patting myself on the back. I thought I'd done such a good job, and I lay down for 10 minutes sleep, just fell asleep, and my partner, who was kind of holding it, also didn't, you know, he had family responsibilities, so they all thought that it was like some kind of Zen trick, you know, to, you know, the participants, you know, what we're going to do. And they, you know, very thankfully, there'd been a few that had gone on before, so they actually carried on with the dance. I was just so embarrassed. It was so humbling, you know, because I thought I'd done something really good.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
No, thank you, Sarah. And you know, we really appreciate it. You know, we understand that. This process is, it seems, is for people who are in need of something. You know, I could call it the lost or the fallen, or, you know, but we're in need of something and we don't maybe quite know what it is. But it certainly feels like, you know, you've got it. And then, you know, the rarity of people actually then actioning, sharing it, you know, is so rare. There's something like a cloaking device on this. I don't know what it is. But I think it's around having to do the work ourselves, because it's no picnic, this retreat, is it? And you know, it does demand a lot. And we're quite explicit about that. And it not being therapy, you know, and there is, you know, that need, you know, and the place for that, you know, before and post, but during, it's not that. So, you know, we're very grateful, you know, for you coming up and, you know, bringing yourself and your presence and what you bring to it, and also in sharing it. And, you know, we're very grateful. We have quite a few people coming from you, so thank you for that.
No, you're very welcome. I was very evangelical, particularly after the first retreat, about it. And it's interesting because when you talk about like it as a call, I've spoken about it with people, and sometimes I just say something, oh, this retreat changed my life, and I might not even go into details. And everyone's like, oh, you know, kind of tell me more. And then I might give them the details or something like that. And then there's part of me that's going, why isn't everyone signing up? Like, you just heard it's changed someone's life. That was really intriguing to you. And so when you mentioned this call, I guess it's just interesting what we're drawn to. I had a friend who I told him about it and he was going to do it. And then he went on the website and he saw a photograph of the dyads. And because of how close people were sitting to each other, that was the thing that made him go, no. And that was really surprising to me, really surprising. I'm not sure where I'm going with this, but I guess there is something about, I think, one, offering and going like, this is what we've got, and just sort of holding it out like this, and this is what it did for me. And then people can kind of go like, okay, am I drawn to, am I attracted to that, or am I not? And there's something in that, like, what are the things that what is it in us that kind of gets pulled forward towards something or not? So yeah, I'm not quite sure what my point is, but I don't know, when you were just saying this idea of it being a call.
Yeah, no, I think it's very unconscious, and it shows itself in different ways, you know. You know, sometimes in, you know, I you know, we had another therapist come and get to the door twice and not be able to enter the threshold, and then the third time came and, you know, got it straight away, you know, got it, you know, but got the awoke to, you know, his truth of being. But there's something, you know, which is equally repulsive, I think, as it is drawing. And, you know, of course, we're the human paradox and it has to exist. But there is something which people either chime or they don't. It's as simple as that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, talking people into it is, I think I've, you know, kind of over-egged it twice. One didn't go so well, and one, thankfully, you know, turned out quite well. But now it does seem much more of an offering of just saying, you know, this is, you know, something. It is an initiation. You know, it seems like a rite of passage. There's kind of stuff which comes up, maybe. But the change is, for me, it was life-changing. And, you know, resonate with, you know, as you've just said, you held it up. And for a lot of people, they don't want that. They're not. That's one of the great barriers of, you know, the final barriers of great doubt, is that it may change things for them. So absolutely, it may change things for people. That brings a lot of fear. So you know, it seems like is it uncomfortable enough, you know, for people to to, you know, be open to the change, really. So
Yeah.
our first meditation teacher back in 1993, she used to say, be careful when you meditate because you may be grabbed by the universe. And people don't say stuff like that these days. You know, it's like, oh, meditation, it's all great. And, you know, well, you know, things occur and things, you know, it can be deeply perturbing, spirituality. You know, that's the nature of it.
Well, and independence, and because I called myself, well, didn't call myself it, but said there's a streak of, can be a streak of sort of pathological independence in me. Robert Holden talks about this, and he talks about how that drive for independence is sort of this desire to be the god of your own world. And so it's like being humbled can be really painful, but when it's done without shame and when it's just done with compassion, it can just be like the most beautiful, releasing thing. Only the other day I sat down, I was working through some judgments on someone. I was doing Byron Katie's questions and turning them around. And as I was doing it, I realized like where I was the problem in this situation and where I was potentially more of a problem than this person I was holding these judgments about. And there was this, it was like initially like a sharp sting, very brief, like a sting of my ego, if you like. And then just like freedom, and like my relationship with this person has improved like exponentially. And it's, I'm so grateful. And this is where the shift that happened for me the other year was, I am so grateful to myself for the willingness to sit down and do that. And I'm so grateful for whatever it is that supports me. And the two-way of that experience of gratitude is like another level. It's not like, oh, I should be grateful for all the good things in my life, that I have a home, that I have that. It's not that. It's a deep, it's appreciation might even be a better word.
Yeah, no, it's so beautiful. And that isn't something that you can conjure up. It's like, you know, it comes from within. And it's very shared in that. There's no one else I'd rather be than me. You know, I'm grateful for everything that's gone before. And to live in this manner now is, it feels very kind of mundanely hyper cosmic, which is Platonic language, by the way. The hyper cosmic is known as the mundane. So it's kind of like, it changes things, and that is so beautiful to hear. Yeah, the resonance of that. Yeah, good job. And thank you. Thanks for coming and doing this.
No problem. I've enjoyed this conversation immensely.
Good. All right. So enjoy Spain.
Thank you.
And hopefully we'll see you in September as well. You're coming again, I believe.
Yeah, hope so.
Bless you. Thank you. Thanks so much, Sarah.
No problems at all.
God bless.